What's going on, you guys? It is your boy, the American F1 fan, Eric Ringle here, and today we are going to do a final tier list as the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, as I'm recording this, ended earlier this morning in the United States. So I figured let's go through the 20 drivers on the F1 grid and let's give them a grade for their entire season. So I figured this was kind of a good way to end the season as far as the drivers. We're also going to do this for the teams as well. But I just kind of figured let's give each driver a rank throughout the season. So we've made this tier list maker. So we're going to go through this and rank every driver. So we're just going to go in order of what they have here on the screen. So first comes first, it is Fernando Alonso. And I truly think that Alpine has done him an absolute disservice this season with the reliability of their engine. I think at points during this season, he put it on pole position in Canada, and throughout the season when his car was reliable, he had some really, really, really good results. And unfortunately, Abu Dhabi, he, ended up having to retire the car because of a water leak. I'm going to place him in the B category. I truly think that Fernando Alonso had probably one of the better seasons you could have for being a middle-of-the-road team. So I'm going to give him a B. Now, moving on, going to Lance Stroll. He had an okay season. I think it was pretty average, especially considering, there was talk that Aston Martin could be really bad going into the season, especially coming out of testing. Even out of Bahrain, the talk was that Aston Martin has really fallen off the wagon and really, kind of done a disservice. But, he had an average season, but also, it doesn't hurt when your father's the owner of the Formula One team you're driving for. And so I think at times throughout this season, he kind of got the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to give him a low C, like borderline. I was almost going to go D, but I'll give him a lower end C. I think Lance Stroll did good at times, but I think, like I said, the strategy calls from Aston Martin, you could tell, were definitely in favor of Mr. Stroll there. So moving on, Esteban Ocon, I think, had a really good season. Alpine finished fourth in the constructor standings this season, beating out McLaren, which I think had Alpine been able to sit there and say we were going to still finish fourth after Bahrain and the team being nowhere after there, I think they would have absolutely taken it in a heartbeat. And this is one of the teams that I had way off in my, when I did my, predictions for, the team and drivers' standings. I had Alpine way down the list. So for them to finish fourth, and Esteban did a fantastic job. There were some times he came into clashes with Fernando, but I think all in all, B is a really good grade for Esteban. And I think, going into next season, Esteban's going to have to really prove himself to be showing himself as a leader for Alpine next year. Carlos Sainz, we're moving on to, and he really definitely had his moments at Ferrari this season. I'm gonna give him a B. I'm gonna give him the B range. For what Charles Leclerc was able to do in the Ferrari, and for Carlos Sainz not to at least come close to matching it, is a little disappointing. And I know this is the first year of the new regulations, but still, I think Carlos Sainz should have been easily, putting up the same results, as Charles Leclerc at times. Yes, Carlos did get a win this season, but, I think he could have done a lot better in a Ferrari, car that was literally second on the grid, was pushing first all throughout the season. So moving on, Sergio Perez, I give an A to. Sergio Perez did a really good job with Red Bull. I think there were a lot of people going into this season that, questioned whether or not Red Bull needed to keep Sergio around. But let's be honest, Sergio has done an amazing job in that Red Bull. Yes, he's not at the same level as Max Verstappen, but I mean, really, right now, who is? So I would give Sergio Perez an A here. He did an amazing job. Finished third in the driver's standings this year. Even had Max Verstappen given him the position back in Brazil, he still would have lost out and finished third in the driver's standings. But great job to Sergio Perez, really, showing that he belongs at Red Bull. So moving on, Lewis Hamilton, very pedestrian season from Lewis. Beginning of the season, you thought, okay, they're putting up good, decent results. At Bahrain, they finished really good there. They were just having these, good results. You had George Russell having, basically being called Mr. Consistency for a really good reason. So I would say that Lewis, I think, really had a B season, and I think he would even would literally claim he had a B season. And I think even Carlos had a better season than him. I would even say, maybe Esteban and Fernando had better seasons than him, but I'll put him in between Esteban and Carlos Sainz. I think Lewis will be the first to admit that he had probably one of his most off seasons this year, finishing behind George Russell in the standings. So I think a B is, a pretty good grade for what he was able to do, especially in the second half of the season. So then moving on, we are on to K-Mag, the first of the two Haas drivers, and Kevin Magnussen. After that shock, points that he got in Bahrain, I think a lot of people, and including myself, thought Haas really took a step forward this year. And, granted, there were races that, Haas was really able to show, their true, potential. But after the new upgrades came and, the big upgrade package came, it seemed like the car almost went nowhere. And we've seen this in the past from before with Haas, where, they bring this huge upgrade package and then all of a sudden their car gets worse. And that's almost what it seemed to be this season. But, I mean, for K-Mag to be gone for, a season, and then come back to Haas, I think he did an amazing job here. I'm going to give him a high C, borderline B. Still there were times that he, I think, seriously would make the same mistakes as K-Mag would do from time to time. But he did get a pole position in Interlagos in Brazil. You know what? I'm giving him a low B. I'm giving him... Right now, he's behind Fernando. K-Mag did an amazing job in the Haas this year. I think had they gone with just about any other driver, I don't know had Haas... Would Haas have scored the same amount of points this season with some other driver other than K-Mag? And I question that very seriously. So then moving on to Mick Schumacher, this is where I think and I know there's a bunch of Michael Schumacher fans and Mick Schumacher fans out there that are going to hate me for this. I'm giving him a low, it's a low D. And Mick, yes, he has scored points throughout the season. For everybody that says that he was supposed to make, usually he makes these really good jumps going into the second season of, whatever series he's in. We just didn't see the type of performance I think a lot of people were expecting from Mick. And, Mick made some horrible mistakes all throughout this season that cost the Haas team a lot of money. And you could see that, they weren't bringing as many upgrades after the big upgrade package And it was, I believe it was either Hungary or France. It was somewhere in there where they brought the big upgrade package. And I think that really hampered the team because Mick had huge crashes in Monaco, Saudi Arabia that cost the team a lot of money. And they just weren't going to be able to bring the same upgrades that a lot of these other teams were bringing in. They were bringing in, small upgrades to the nose, to the, front wing, down, back wing, the side pods. Haas just wasn't able to do that, and they were having to spend a lot of money in replacing a lot of the parts that Mick, wrecked when he's had his huge crashes. Moving on next to Nicholas Latifi, it's an F. I mean, let's be totally frank, and it's not. And this thought has been going through my mind all day as I was thinking about what grades I was going to give everybody. I truly think last season and the stuff that Nicholas had to go through in the off season last year, from the constant harassment, the death threats, just everything he had to go through because, fans of Formula One, and I won't point to one driver or the other, but there were a lot of people that were blaming him for last season, and that's not the case. It's not Nicholas's fault. Yes, you can blame the FIA, but to go after Nicholas Latifi the way that they did, way that a lot of Formula One fans did in the Formula One community was absolutely disgusting. I'm going to be totally frank with you here. And, I think a lot of that played into this season with Nicholas Latifi. I think, with what he had to go through last season or at the end of last season into this season, I just think his mind was totally elsewhere, trying to figure out what he needed to do to make amends for last season. And then he just became a meme throughout the season. And I feel bad for him, but I mean, he deserves the F this season. So then we move on to Alexander Albon. Fantastic job from Alex this season at Williams, where a car just, the Williams car was just nowhere. It was never going to be anywhere. It was one of the, even through testing, you could kind of tell that this was going to be a last place car. But Alexander Albon did an amazing job at certain points all throughout the season. Did that amazing almost zero stop in Australia earlier in the season where he literally pitted on the last lap to fulfill the tire regulations within Formula One. I think that blew everybody's mind, and I think that showed a lot of people about how good of a driver he can truly be. And for Red Bull to have let him go to Williams, this really helps Williams out. And I'm going to give him a high C. I'm going to put him ahead of Lance Stroll. I think he deserves to be ahead of Lance. I think he's shown, that he is a very competent race car driver, and especially with Williams, with as crappy as that car has been all season, he's dragged that car into positions it probably should have never been in. Moving over to Pierre Gasly, who's going to move over to Alpine in 2023. Pierre Gasly had a really off year this year. I believe, I need to look at the points, but I believe AlphaTauri finished behind Haas for 8th position in the constructor standings. Gasly was really off this year. I don't know if it was just his, I don't know really, to be honest. There's nothing more I can say. I'm going to give him a D, and I'll give Yuki Tsunoda a D as well. Yuki, and I would almost put him behind. I'm going to put him behind Mick, to be honest. Yes, Yuki made some steps this season, but I think in the grand scheme of things, AlphaTauri just, for whatever it is, their car went nowhere this year, and their talent regressed. Pierre looked bad. There were times Yuki Tsunoda looked good, but he's still got this, this what the team says is an anger management issue, but with a crap car, I mean, you got to kind of expect at times that, you're going to be pissed off at either strategies or the car itself. So, I mean, but I think AlphaTauri really, kind of was behind the eight ball this year. Then moving on to Valtteri Bottas, who moved over to Alfa Romeo in 2022, did an amazing job with Alfa Romeo. Got him all the way up to sixth in the standings. I believe Aston Martin ends up passing them, potentially. I don't know exactly where it was. But Valtteri did an amazing job in Alfa Romeo this year. Showed very early signs that the car had, really turned a corner and started to really, get extremely better. And I would rank him up there. I'm going to put him up there with Lewis. I think, to where he had the Alfa Romeo, he finished top 10 in the driver standings. And to have that car where it was all throughout the season, was making Q3s on a pretty decent basis. I mean, they're there for a little bit. I think in the middle part of the season, I think they were having some issues with the car, but they got on top of it, and I think was really able to, maximize what Alfa Romeo was able to do going into the 2022 season. Now with Guan Yu Zhou, I'm going to rate him as an average, as a C. I think he's a little bit behind Alexander Albon, but ahead of Lance Stroll. Guan Yu Zhou showed some true talent this year, and I was glad to see that Alfa Romeo was going to give him at least one more season to really show his potential, to really show, what he could do. So I'm glad to see that. I'm really interested to see what, Alfa Romeo is going to do going into season 2. These new regulations, are they going to be able to, pull that car a little bit higher and get a little bit closer to the midfield? Maybe get a little bit closer to the Alpines and the McLarens of the world, really start to push for that fourth position and basically what most of us consider best of the rest. So then moving on to McLaren, we got Lando Norris. An amazing job this season from Lando. The team finished fifth in the standings. Was chasing down Alpine all throughout the season. You definitely saw there were times that, maybe Lando, wasn't driving to his full potential. And I think a lot of us, in the Formula One community after Bahrain, we started to think, oh God, McLaren looks bad. Like they were, bottom of the field, looked like they were back markers for those first couple races. And then all of a sudden they figured out something. And I don't even think Lando could really even pinpoint it, when the tides changed for the team. But when it did, he was really on this season. And you could tell that McLaren really favored Lando Norris going into the season with, the upgrade, with what they were doing to the car, the kind of upgrades they were making. They really, 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 I think, favored Lando Norris all throughout. I would give him a solid B. I would say he was about as good as Esteban. Maybe I'll put him behind Fernando here as well. I think he was a solid B here for McLaren. But I just, if a team is going to favor you, going into a season and how they're going to do their upgrades, like you should be able to perform a little bit better than what you did all throughout the season. So then moving on to Daniel Ricciardo, like I said, McLaren favored Lando Norris all throughout this season. You could tell Daniel just could not get grips on this car. Like, he just could not get grips on it at all. And, he would get the points finish every once in a while, but he truly just could not come to grips with it. I'm going to rate him at a D. I think he's a much better driver than what he showed this year. But when a team, really doesn't seem to be helping you out a whole bunch, it kind of shows, and it shows, with where he finished within the driver's standings, and, just the fact that now he's going to be out of Formula One next season. So moving on to a little bit further down into Aston Martin, we have Sebastian Vettel. It's a shame to see him go after the season. Finished 10th in Abu Dhabi today. Really, again, this is another one of those instances where you saw Aston Martin really, give the preferred strategies, give the preferred upgrades to Lance, and I mean, even in Abu Dhabi, to basically let, Sebastian Vettel, try to run a one-stop throughout this entire race. It was totally a mess. And they really just didn't do Sebastian any service this year. But for all the non-service that Aston Martin really gave Sebastian this year, did an amazing job with the car. I would give him a C, a very high C. I'd put him ahead of Alexander Albon. I think he did a really good job and way ahead of Lance Stroll. While I'm sitting here thinking about this, I'm moving Lance down to D. I'm putting him behind Daniel. Sebastian did a fantastic job at Aston Martin, but Lance Stroll just was god-awful. I mean, it's a shame that Sebastian had to go out of Formula One on that terrible of a note. So moving on to Charles Leclerc, A driver, F team as far as the strategy goes. A lot of times I really think that I'm going to put him ahead of Sergio. But I think Charles was the witness to such horrible strategy calls all throughout the season that I think really killed the team and really killed any chance of him winning the championship this year. So then moving on, we've got George Russell. Did an amazing job in the Mercedes this year. Beats out Lewis Hamilton in the points this year. Got his first win of his career in Brazil just a couple weeks ago. A job from George Russell. I think could not have done a better job with a Mercedes car that I think a lot of people thought had really taken a nosedive going into this season. And I think even going into the later part of the season, we started to see the Mercedes come alive. And let's be honest, George Russell was Mr. Consistency all throughout the Formula One season. So I think George Russell definitely deserves an A here. Yes, he had his mistakes here and there, but I think all in all, George, really amazing season this year. Finished fourth in the standings this year. So, good job for George. And, Mercedes has got a lot to look forward to. If and when, Lewis leaves the team, you've definitely got a leader here in George. Then moving on finally to the champion of the season, Max Verstappen. I don't know how else you don't give him an A. 15 wins on the season. Probably one of the most dominant performances we've seen in a Formula One season. As many people that may hate Max Verstappen and, maybe not like the way the last season ended, this season, he backed it up and showed that he was the world championship driver that Red Bull saw in him as a 17 and 18-year-old. He's proved it once again this season and just was absolutely dominant. But guys, this is my list. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do I have somebody rated a little bit too high? Maybe a little bit too low? Let me know that in the comment section down below. Guys, as always, also slap a like on this video for more daily and weekly Formula One content. As the season is over, we're going to have a lot more, reaction videos. We're going to do a couple more tier list videos. I'm going to be breaking down each team, how they did this season and going into 2023. I've got so many more videos to come, so make sure you guys tap a like and also subscribe to my channel if you guys are new for more daily and weekly Formula One content, as we're going to be putting out more and more Formula One content for you, the Formula One fans at home, to get you through this off-season blues. We've got a test coming up this week, so I guess we got to be, semi-excited for that. But guys, again, subscribe if you guys are new. But guys, thank you so much for watching throughout the season. We're at 251 subscribers. Thank you to those 251 subscribers. It means the absolute world, and it means that you guys actually like the content I put out. So guys, thank you so much for this first season of Formula One and allowing me to cover it for you guys. So guys, for the American F1 fan, I'm Eric Ringel, signing off.